que tous les Canadiens.
Because what all Canadians want right now is for inflation to keep going down and interest rates along with it. That's why the budget I've tabled today will enable Canada to remain the country with the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7. We are seeing to it that the wealthiest Canadians and large corporations pay their fair share of tax so that we can keep taxes lower for middle-class families and invest in our healthcare system and our social safety net.
Canada is a country of peace, order, and good government. We have strong institutions and a resilient financial system that is the envy of the world. Our country has a proud tradition of fiscal responsibility. That is a tradition we are determined to uphold. We are refocusing government spending while taking great care not to reduce the services and direct support that Canadians rely on. By exercising fiscal restraint, we're ensuring that we can continue to invest in Canadians and in the Canadian economy for years to come, just as we have done since 2015. Because we know that investments in Canadians are also investments in our economy. This is what the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, has referred to as modern supply-side economics. Nous investissons dans le logement.
We're investing in housing because our economy is built on people, and people need a roof over their head. We are investing so that Canadian workers can acquire the skills they need and get to where the jobs are. We're investing to strengthen the immigration system. And we're bringing a record number of skilled workers to Canada to support our booming businesses. And we're investing in affordable childcare from coast to coast to coast so that more Canadians no longer have to choose between family and career. Investing in housing, skills, and immigration and childcare isn't just social policy, it's economic policy too, Mr. Speaker. The same thing goes for healthcare. So today, we are delivering the overall investment of $198 billion in our public healthcare system, which the Prime Minister announced just last month.
From helping every single Canadian find a family doctor, to tackling the unacceptable backlog of surgeries, to combating the opioid crisis that has devastated so many of our families and our communities, that has taken so many lives. We will ensure that Canadians receive the care they need. We will ensure that every single Canadian can rely on a world-class, publicly funded, universal healthcare system, one that is deserving of its place at the very heart of what it means to be Canadian. And just as we are reinforcing the public healthcare system we have today, we are also expanding its reach. Since December, our investments have helped more than 240,000 Canadian children receive the dental care they need.
Bravo.
Just think about that, 240,000 Canadian kids. Maybe their parents couldn't take them to the dentist before. Maybe their teeth hurt. Maybe they missed days at school. It's so important. And that's why today I am so proud to announce the creation of a new Canadian dental care plan. By the end of this year, by the end of 2023, we will begin rolling out a dental care plan that will eventually cover up to 9 million uninsured Canadians. This will mean that no Canadian ever again will need to choose between taking care of their teeth and paying the bills at the end of the month. It will mean you can't tell the size of someone's paycheck by their smile. These are significant and necessary investments, Mr. Speaker, because a strong and effective public health care system is essential for a strong and healthy Canadian workforce. And we need a strong and healthy Canadian workforce now, more than ever. Because as we wrestle inflation to the ground, Canada must also navigate two fundamental shifts in the global economy. First, in what is the most significant economic transformation since the Industrial Revolution, our friends and partners around the world, chief among them, the United States, are investing heavily to build clean economies and the net zero industries of tomorrow. At the same time, Putin and the pandemic have cruelly revealed to the world's democracies the risks of economic reliance on dictatorships. As a result, our allies are moving quickly to friendshore their economies and build their critical supply chains through democracies like our own. Together, these two great shifts represent the most significant opportunity for Canadian workers in the lifetime of anyone here today. Including our most senior and respected members of this House. Absolutely. Now, this is not hyperbole, Mr. Speaker, or mere turn of phrase. When President von der Leyen stood in this House earlier this month, she said that she wants Canada and Europe to join forces for the climate, for our economies, and to end what she called Europe's dangerous dependencies on authoritarian economies. When President Biden stood in this House just last week, he told us that we are at an inflection point in history. He said that we had all learned the hard way that just-in-time global supply chains make us vulnerable. And he urged us to work together to build a shared future where Canada and the United States can anchor the most competitive, prosperous, and resilient economic region in the world.
Yep.
These are our closest friends, Mr. Speaker. These are our steadfast democratic allies. These are our two greatest trading partners. And like so many of our friends around the world, they need the expertise of Canadian workers, the ingenuity of Canadian businesses, and the resources that Canada has in such fortunate abundance. Aujourd'hui,
today, and in the years to come, Canada has to seize this historic moment, this amazing opportunity we have, or else we'll get left behind as the rest of the world's democracies build the clean economy of the 21st century. So, we are going to fight for Canadians and Canadian companies. We will make sure Canada seizes this historic opportunity. We are building a clean electric grid accessible to all Canadians from coast to coast to coast, which will protect the environment and provide Canadians and Canadian companies with clean, affordable electricity. We are making Canada the best place in the world for businesses to invest, because their investments revitalize communities and bring prosperity, in addition to good careers for Canadians. Canada has free trade deals with 2/3 of the world's economies. We are making Canada a reliable supplier of clean energy to the whole world. And whether it's critical minerals or electric vehicles, we will ensure that Canadian workers develop and process these resources and manufacture and sell the products our allies need. We will ensure that unions, which led to the creation of the middle class, remain on a solid footing. And we are helping Canadian workers get the skills they need. When the Government of Canada makes purchases of products from other countries, we will ensure those countries give Canadian companies the same access as Canada gives them.
Bravo.
So, Mr. Speaker, we are building big things here in Canada. From a Volkswagen battery plant in Ontario. To the Galaxy lithium mine in Quebec.
Yep.
To the Trans Mountain expansion in Alberta.
Yep.
To the Atlantic Loop. To the LNG terminal in Kitimat, BC.
Yep.
Our plan means good paying jobs, good careers for everyone, everywhere, from our biggest cities to our smallest towns, from Toronto, Ontario to Peace River, Alberta. Auto workers building electric vehicles and our bus drivers who drive them. For our skilled tradespeople, expanding our clean energy grid and building thousands and thousands of affordable, energy efficient homes. For our miners and our energy workers, powering Canada and the world. For our healthcare workers and our teachers who make our communities thrive. For our farmers and our fishers who feed Canada and the world. for our incredible service workers who are as essential today as ever.
For our forestry workers, for our climatologists, and for our ecologists, for our engineers who design hydrogen plants and who design small modular reactors, for our computer scientists who have transformed Canada into a global artificial intelligence superpower,
for Indigenous peoples building major projects and sharing in the prosperity they create, and for our new generation of small business entrepreneurs dreaming up solutions to the challenges of the 21st century, and their hard-working employees providing for their families all across our great country. As I've traveled across Canada over the past year, Mr. Speaker, I have met a lot of incredible, hard-working Canadians. Jeff, an electrician who lives in Etobicoke with his wife, Cheryl, an ICU nurse. They are proud of their jobs and proud of their family. Their jobs have made it possible for them to raise. As Jeff said to me, I've got the skills to pay the bills. Léonard.
I met Léonard. He's a software developer in Quebec City. He codes charging stations which are used all over the place, from San Diego, California to Happy Valley Goose Bay in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Two young union women, Nicole in Oshawa, who will start her first electrical placement this week. Well done, Nicole. And Kayla, first in Edmonton and then again in Calgary. She teaches apprentices to weld, and she gave me a couple of lessons, too. I've met potash miners and early learning and childhood educators. I've met scientists and innovators and the longshore workers and truckers who keep Canada's economy moving. And all across Canada, I've met people who value the same things. A good career that pays them well, doing work they're proud of. The ability to live with dignity, to be who they are, to love who they love, and to be judged on their character rather than what they look like or where they were born. The belief that if they work hard, they can afford to raise their children and launch them into an even more prosperous future. And the conviction, Mr. Speaker, that because they live in Canada, by birth or by choice, every single day represents a new, fresh opportunity. And that is what this budget invests in, the possibility for every single Canadian to share in the remarkable opportunities that Canada provides, and in the new era of prosperity that we will build together. The brave people of Ukraine have reminded me, I think they've reminded all of us, that we must never take our freedom and our democracy for granted. We have the power to shape our country's future, and we must always be sure to use it. What a gift it is to call this remarkable country our home. Canada is a land filled with good, hard-working people, people who do big and important things. And it is because of us, the people of Canada, and the big and important things we will do in the months and years to come, that I have never been more optimistic about the future of our great country than I am today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? L'honorable.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the budget leads us to ask a lot of questions. In 2015, let's not forget that this government promised to run small deficits and then return to a balanced budget in just 4 years, Mr. Speaker. This same Prime Minister told us that one day the books would balance themselves, Mr. Speaker. This Prime Minister said that it was time to invest in Canada because interest rates are low and will remain low forever, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Finance today is tabling a budget which is very similar to last year's. In last year's budget, I quote, it says, allow me to be very clear about something, Mr. Speaker. We are absolutely determined to ensure that our debt-to-GDP ratio continues to decrease. Our deficits must continue to decrease, and the debt we take on to ensure that Canadians remain financially solvent will absolutely be repaid. That is our fiscal anchor. 42.4. That was last year's number. Canada has a strong tradition of fiscal responsibility. It's my duty to ensure that that remains the case, and that's what I will do. And their prediction for this year was 43.5, the following year, 43.2. Then, at the next budget, following those announcements, the finance minister already went beyond her fiscal anchor. One should never go beyond one's fiscal anchor. So, Mr. Speaker, given everything I've just said, can the Minister for Inflation tell us how Canadians can be expected to believe even a word of this budget? The Honourable Finance Minister. Mr. Speaker, we promised that deficits would decrease. And that is what we are demonstrating today. Last year, the deficit was 1.5% of our GDP. This year, the deficit will be 1.4% of our GDP. Also, the deficit last year was 43 billion. This year, the deficit will be 40 billion. Once again, that is a decrease. Mr. Speaker, there is something that I would like to make very clear for Canadians tuning in tonight. Canada has the lowest deficit of all G7 countries. We also have the lowest debt-to-GDP ratio of all G7 countries. Not only do we have the lowest deficit of all G7 countries, it's lower than that of Germany and the United States. We have lower deficits than fellow AAA-rated G7 countries. Our deficit is also lower than that of Australia and that of the Netherlands, other countries with AAA credit ratings. Mr. Speaker, it's important to understand the economic situation of Canada from an international perspective. Our country is strong. We are very, very lucky to be here in Canada. Before we continue, I would like to remind the members that we only have a certain amount of time.
Concise as possible, and with their questions and their answers, so we can get as many questions as possible. L'honorable député de Mirabel.
The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, aeronautics and aerospace are the pride of Quebec. Despite that, though, Canada is the only G7 country with no overall global policy for those industries. There's nothing in this budget, Mr. Speaker, to correct the harmful effect of the luxury tax on aircraft, which is harmful to Quebec. When it comes time to help Ontario, Ottawa is always there for them, but here in this budget, $18.6 billion in subsidies is going to go to oil and gas, Mr. Speaker. Yet there's not a cent, not a penny for aerospace. Why not? The Honourable Finance Minister. Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague has asked a few questions. I'll start by addressing the luxury tax. Our government is proud to have instated that luxury tax. In our view, the most wealthy have to pay their fair share. If the party across the way disagrees, they should say so to their voters. Now, as for supporting Quebec's industries, our government has been there for them, we are there for them, and we will always be there for them. Our electricity credit is an excellent one. It is an excellent program. It's excellent for Quebec. Quebec has a global advantage with its green electricity, clean electricity, but Quebec will need more and more electricity. That is the reason why we have announced a major investment in green electricity. If the member across the way disagrees with me, he should talk to Léonard, the software developer I spoke with last week in Quebec City. Léonard works for a company that creates charging stations for electric vehicles, and he supports our program. Questions and comments?
Please, the honourable member for Elmwood-Transcona.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention some of the things in the budget worth commending. They're very familiar items to those of us in the NDP caucus here who have called for affordability measures like another doubling of the GST rebate, for a Canada-wide dental insurance plan that's now on the way, to real and meaningful labor conditions around federal investments in clean tech to ensure that it's not just companies but workers that actually benefit from the investments that we have to make to launch ourselves into the new energy economy, and meaningful investment for Indigenous people living in urban, rural, and northern communities that are struggling, as many Canadians are, with the housing market. But I have to say the budget also rightly includes warnings of a coming recession, warnings that we're hearing from private sector economists as well. And we know that when recession hits and unemployment goes up, the program that Canadians depend upon to be able to pay the bills is employment insurance. That's right. In fact, the employment insurance system was so bad it had to be completely overhauled during the pandemic because it couldn't get the job done. And in September of last year, the government let those temporary measures drop. They've been promising EI modernization for the entire 7 or 8, depending on who you talk to, years that they've been in government. They haven't delivered. That's right. So why is it that as Canada looks down the barrel of a recession, the government is missing in action on employment insurance reform?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to start by thanking the member of member for Elmwood-Transcona for his collaboration and his hard work as we prepared this budget. And I do want to emphasize a couple of the points he made. I am, as I said, really, really proud that we are the government that is introducing dental care for every single Canadian. I am glad that we are able to provide support for the most vulnerable Canadians, to provide a grocery rebate. These are people who really need the help, and it is so important that we're able to be there for them. And I really want to emphasize the third point that my colleague made, and this is the labor element of our clean economy tax credits. This is an innovation for Canada. We haven't done it before, but this time, when the government supports economic growth, when the government supports innovative entrepreneurial businesses, we're going to make sure that we are supporting great jobs for working people at the same time. That is so important. And when it comes to EI, Mr. Speaker, let me say this. Our government has always been there for Canadian working people, whether it was during COVID when we had to put in place emergency measures, or whether it has been in the design, in the innovative design of these tax credits. Now, come what may, in the weeks and months to come. And so far, let me just say, employment is holding up pretty well, even as the economy slows down. But no one has a crystal ball. And so I just want to conclude by assuring every single Canadian listening to us today, we will always be there for every single Canadian, come what may.
Resuming debate. There we go. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Inflation made a statement last year. She said, "Allow me to be very clear, Mr. Speaker. We are absolutely determined to ensure that our debt-to-GDP ratio continues to decrease. We will make sure of that, Mr. Speaker." Here we are, a year later. That was not accomplished. It's interesting because just a few days ago, she admitted that deficits fuel inflation. Today, she's tabling a budget with $43 billion in additional spending that will be paid for through taxes and taxpayers. Conservatives work for those who work, and that's why we will vote against this inflationary plan, Mr. Speaker.
It's only a few days ago that deficit spending would spark even more inflation, higher grocery bills, more expensive housing, and other costs for families. And today, she rolls out a bonanza of $43 billion of new inflation, debt, and taxes that will be on the backs of everyday, hard-working Canadians. We set 3 conditions for our support in this budget. 1, that it bring home lower prices by eliminating the inflationary carbon tax and deficits. 2, that it bring home powerful paychecks with lower taxes that reward hard work. And 3, that it bring homes that our young people can afford by removing gatekeepers to speed up building. None of these three demands have been met. All that they have delivered is more debt, more inflation, and more costs on the backs of the hardworking and beleaguered people of this country. And that is why Conservatives are proud to announce we will be voting against this inflationary stand.
Minister of Inflation.
In fact, the gross cost of all the new spending announcements in this budget works out to $4,300 for every single family in Canada. That's almost enough to house the Prime Minister in the hotel room for one night, Mr. Speaker. That's how expensive this government has become. The war on work continues. The inflationary policies intensify. Canadians who are living in desperation, skipping meals, living in parents' basements, unable to drive to work, falling into depression and even considering suicide because they cannot afford the pressure and the bills that this Prime Minister has imposed after 8 long years. This budget makes all of those pressures, all of those pains, and all of those costs even worse. Ce budget rendra encore.
This budget will make costs, pressure, and difficulties even harder for each family. That is why we will be voting against this budget, and we will present our own approach, an approach based on common sense, Mr. Speaker. Common sense, which recognizes everyday Canadians who do their work and who pay their bills.
The people who work hard, pay their taxes, and play by the rules. We want to bring home a nation that works for the people who do the work. Bring home lower prices, bring home powerful paychecks, bring homes people can afford. It's the common sense of the common people united for our common home. Your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home, Mr. Speaker. I now move to adjourn.
Before moving to adjourn, I just want to remind the honourable members in their speech, I know sometimes they get carried away, but some sarcastic calls of each other, and I just want to make sure that everybody respects each other. Je vais faire sûr que
I want to ensure that when we refer to each other, it's by the appropriate title, not by something that is fabricated and insults. I don't want one side or the other to be insulting. So it's something to reflect on and to be judicious with words.
Monsieur Poilievre.
Mr. Poilievre, seconded by Mr. Halan, moves that debate be now adjourned.
To Standing Order 83-2, the motion is deemed adopted, and the House stands adjourned until tomorrow at 2 p.m. pursuant to Standing Order 24-1.
Comme il est 4 heures, la Chambre va passer à la séance sur la présentation du budget.
Ordre du jour, ordre émanant du gouvernement, étude de la motion de voix et moyens numéro 10 au sujet de la politique budgétaire.
Madame Freeland, appuyée par Monsieur Boissonneau, propose que la Chambre approuve la politique budgétaire générale du gouvernement. The Honorable Minister of Finance.
L'honorable ministre des Finances.
Monsieur le Président, conformément à l'article 83U du règlement, j'aimerais déposer dans les 2 langues officielles les documents budgétaires du 2023, y compris les avis de mention de voix et moyens. The details of the measures.
Les détails des mesures figurent dans ces documents. Conformément à l'article du règlement 83.2, je demande à ce que ces motions soient inscrites à l'ordre du jour. Monsieur le Président, l'économie du Canada s'est rétablie depuis la récession de la COVID. L'an dernier, le Canada peut se targuer d'avoir eu la plus forte croissance économique du G7. Il y a 830 000 plus de Canadiens qui travaillent aujourd'hui que quand nous avons été frappés par la COVID. Nous avons recouvré 126% des emplois qui avaient été perdus pendant les premiers mois, contre juste 114% aux États-Unis. Quand nous avons annoncé un système pan-canadien de garde d'enfants et d'apprentissage précoce dans notre budget de 2021, nous avons dit que cela créerait de nouvelles occasions économiques pour les mères partout au Canada et que cela favoriserait ainsi une plus grande prospérité pour nous tous. Et savez-vous quoi, Monsieur le Président? Ça a marché. Je suis fier de pouvoir dire que le mois dernier, la participation au marché du travail des femmes canadiennes dans la force de l'âge a atteint un niveau record, 85,7%. C'est une politique économique féministe. Ça marche. Aujourd'hui, Monsieur le Président, il y a plus de Canadiens avec de bons emplois que jamais par le passé.
On fait grimper l'inflation dans le monde entier. Les banques centrales ont réagi en lançant l'une des cycles de resserrement monétaire les plus rapides et les plus synchronisés depuis les années 1980. Et aujourd'hui, au Canada, l'inflation diminue. En effet, le taux d'inflation diminue depuis 8 mois de suite et est tombé à 5,2% en février. La Banque du Canada prévoit qu'elle tombera à seulement 2,6% d'ici la fin de l'année. En février, le salaire moyen des Canadiens a augmenté de 5,4%. Les chèques de paie ont donc connu une augmentation plus marquée que l'inflation, ce qui signifie que les Canadiens, d'une nation à l'autre, disposent de plus d'argent après leur journée du travail. Cependant, nous savons tous que nos amis et nos voisins vulnérables subissent encore les conséquences de la hausse des prix. C'est pourquoi notre budget prévoit des mesures ciblées et temporaires qui atténueront les effets d'inflation pour ceux qui en ont besoin. Pour 11 millions de Canadiens et familles canadiennes, le nouveau remboursement pour l'épicerie compensera la hausse des prix sans jeter de l'huile sur le feu de l'inflation. Car ce que tous les Canadiens souhaitent aujourd'hui, c'est que l'inflation continue de diminuer et que les taux d'intérêt baissent. C'est pourquoi le budget que j'ai déposé aujourd'hui permettra au Canada de conserver le déficit et le ratio de la dette au PIB les plus faibles parmi le G7. Nous voyons à ce que les très riches et les grandes entreprises paient leur juste part des impôts pour que nous puissions conserver des impôts peu élevés pour les familles de la classe moyenne et investir dans le système de santé et le filet de sécurité sociale.
Le Canada est un pays de paix, d'ordre et de bon gouvernement. Nous avons des institutions solides et un système financier résilient qui fait l'envie du monde. Notre pays a une fière tradition de responsabilité budgétaire, une tradition que nous sommes déterminés à maintenir. Nous reciblons les dépenses gouvernementales tout en veillant à ne pas réduire les services et le soutien direct dont les Canadiens et les Canadiennes dépendent. En faisant preuve de rigueur budgétaire, nous veillons à pouvoir continuer à investir dans les Canadiens et dans l'économie canadienne, et ce pour des années à venir, comme nous l'avons fait depuis 2015. Pourquoi? Parce que nous savons que les investissements dans les Canadiens sont aussi des investissements dans notre économie. C'est ce qu'a dit la secrétaire du Trésor des États-Unis, Janet Yellen, parlant de l'économie de l'offre moderne.
Parce que notre économie est bâtie par les gens et que les gens ont besoin d'un toit. Nous investissons pour les travailleurs canadiens afin qu'ils disposent des compétences nécessaires et puissent se rendre là où se trouvent les emplois. Nous investissons pour renforcer le système d'immigration et accueillons au Canada un nombre record de travailleurs qualifiés pour soutenir nos entreprises en pleine croissance. Et nous investissons dans des services de garde d'enfants abordables pour les familles d'une nation à l'autre, afin que davantage de Canadiennes n'aient plus à choisir entre leur famille et leur carrière. Les investissements dans le logement, les compétences, l'immigration et la garde d'enfants ne sous-tendent pas seulement des politiques sociales, ils sous-tendent aussi des politiques économiques, Monsieur le Président. Et les soins de santé relèvent aussi de ces politiques. Aujourd'hui, nous réalisons donc l'investissement global de 198 milliards de dollars dans les soins de santé publique que le Premier ministre a annoncé le mois dernier.
Aider chaque Canadien à trouver un médecin de famille. Réduire les retards scandaleux pour les opérations chirurgicales. Lutter contre la crise des opioïdes, qui a dévasté tant de familles, tant de communautés, qui a pris tant de vies. Nous allons veiller à ce que les Canadiens reçoivent les soins dont ils ont besoin. Veiller à ce que chaque Canadien puisse compter sur un système de soins de santé publique de classe mondiale. Un qui mérite la place qu'il occupe dans l'identité même des Canadiens.
just as we are reinforcing
Nous renforçons donc le système actuel. Nous en élargissons aussi la portée. Depuis décembre, nos investissements ont aidé plus de 240 000 enfants canadiens à